Hello everyone and welcome to our Purple Book segment. I'm going to be reviewing with you 2 books a month, so a book every 2 weeks. And I just have to say I love reading. I've always been a reader my entire life. I've always loved books and learning. But I think I lost a little bit of that passion when I started college. And this year was like, nope, you need to start reading again. So yeah, welcome to this journey. I want to be sharing with you all the knowledge that I get from these books and the reason why you need to read it. Today we're going to be reviewing Michelle Obama's book Becoming that I have right here. I just have to say it was an absolute amazing book. Let's just talk a little bit about the book first. It was released in November 2018 and it sold around 1.4 million copies just during the first week, which made it the best-selling book of the year 2018, which is absolutely amazing. Since then, it has sold more than 10 million copies. Right now, Netflix just released a documentary about the book and I'm super excited to watch it because I want to see Michelle interacting with people and really get to know a little bit more about her seeing in video and not just writing. Okay, so I'm going to divide this review in 3 parts. We're going to talk about the writing style, we're going to talk about message, and the reason why I love the book so much. Well, let me just say that this book is beautifully written. Sometimes I felt like I was even reading poetry. It was that beautiful, like the words just flowed and there was so much harmony in the way the book was divided, especially in the first part. Scenes were perfectly described to the point where you could imagine yourself there and really put yourself in her shoes. It was almost like having a conversation with Michelle herself. And I do have to admit that the first part was more entertaining to read than the other 2, just because of the way they described some scenes in her childhood. Okay, now without further ado, let's really dive into the book. So the book is divided in 3 parts: Becoming Me, Becoming Us, and Becoming More. Let's start with the beginning, Becoming Me. Here, Michelle really illustrates where she comes from, how she was raised, and really her journey from childhood into adulthood. Michelle illustrates how she was raised in the south side of Chicago in a very normal neighborhood. If you see actually a picture that she added to the book when she was in around 1st or 2nd grade, I'm actually gonna put it right here. As time went by, she noticed how white families were moving out of the neighborhood. People and real estate agents were actually scaring them and telling them to sell their house because the price was gonna go down, and they started moving to the suburbs. I'm gonna link the other picture right here of her classmates when she was in about 6th grade, if I'm not mistaken, and you can see that there was almost no diversity at all, and it's crazy to see that change during her lifetime. Okay, let's dive into her family dynamics now, which for me are the most interesting. Her parents really raised her to be very self-reliant, very independent, and to speak up every time she saw injustice or things like that. That's why, of course, she ended up becoming a lawyer. And to me, that was super interesting because even though they let her be, they really had high expectations of her. Her parents literally poured all they had into Craig's and Michelle's education. From a very young age, they instilled in her a very high sense of self-confidence and trust and discipline. There was actually this moment in the book where she mentions how in 2nd grade, she loved learning. And in 2nd grade, they assigned her this teacher that was just really not good at her job and she wasn't learning at all and she was super frustrated. And she once was ranting to her mom how she wasn't learning and she didn't want to go to school and be in that classroom. And imagine her, I mean, she was probably around 8-9 years old at the time and she just couldn't stand it. And her mom took the matter into her own hands and went to the principal and really tried to make the change happen. That to me just shows how involved her parents were. There was another instance where there was a study abroad program to go to France and get better at French, and she didn't want to ask her parents for it because she thought maybe they couldn't afford it. But somehow they found out and they told her that it was not her job to worry about money. So they sent her, I think they truly were involved in her education, and they were a big part of making her who she is. Well, I have to say that this first part was my absolute favorite. I really got to know Michelle, to see what made her tick, to really understand her mind. Before reading this book, I knew she was a lawyer before, I knew she was an accomplished woman, Harvard graduate, but I didn't know her story so well. So now I'm just glad I read it. By the end of this first part, we learn that she goes to Princeton to get her law degree, and then she gets a really good job at a law firm in Chicago where she meets Barack. And then that's the start of Becoming Us. Okay, now let's talk about Becoming Us. This section was truly insightful as well. However, it wasn't as creatively written as the first one. In here, she faces the dilemma of job fulfillment. She starts wondering if she actually took the right path as a lawyer, and it's almost like an inner battle with herself, trying to figure out what she really wants to do with her life. We also get to know Barack very well, their long distance relationship, ultimately their life together as a couple, and just all the side hustles that they had and everything that they had going on when they were just a couple in their late 20s. And ultimately, Barack's introduction to politics and how that shaped their whole lives together and all the things that they had going on at the time. Because let me tell you, they were very committed to their careers. In this chapter, Mali and Sasha were born, and then it describes all the campaign details once Michelle agreed that Obama could run for president. So it was a really interesting chapter. I actually learned a lot that I didn't know, because when all this was happening in 2008, I was a kid. It was actually super interesting to learn about Barack as well, and how he was dealing with all these things at the same time. Like, you're gonna read this book and you're gonna ask yourself, how did that guy do it? It's just, we have the same 24 hours in a day, but this guy was just in another level. Now let's touch on Becoming More. In this last section of the book, we really get to see Michelle blossom and adapt to her new role and all the ups and downs that come with it. It wasn't easy though. She went through a roller coaster of emotions in a very short period of time. He details how she became from one day just a regular woman to this public figure, and how the media was just trying to figure her out and were just shaming her and different things, and how it's so hard to become a public figure and be in the public eye out of nowhere. She also mentioned how her family dynamics changed and how all of a sudden she had to have a guard with her at all times and the Secret Service involved. It was just super interesting to see how that changed her and affected her at first, and how it changed her kids' lives. Throughout this section, we really see her blossom into her new First Lady role. Even though she battled with it at first, but then she understood that she had now this epic platform that she can use to improve people's lives. So she decided to make it her goal to improve kids' lives through nutrition and proper health knowledge with her campaign, Let's Move. On top of that, she helped out the military families to get the support that they needed after they came back from duty. We also learned about Michelle's family's interaction in the White House, how her mom moved into the White House to help with the girls, how she had to basically build a wall between her and politics to not overstep Barack's position. And she just really details all the great things and horrible things she and Barack had to endure during their time in the White House. Now let's talk about what I loved about this. If we really analyze this book, we can discover a deeply self-aware and ambitious woman that knows what she wants and whose life was just turned upside down in a matter of a couple of years, and was then trying to adapt to her new role of not being the leader that she always was, but to just complement Barack's efforts through her campaigns like Let's Move and how she helped the military families. Something that I didn't mention before, she had this girls mentoring program, which I thought it was absolutely amazing. So she did a lot of things that fulfilled her in her new role. Most first ladies really don't have to do much. They just have to be there, they just have to support their husband, but it's not really an actual role. They don't get paid for anything. And Michelle made it into a role. She really made a difference throughout Barack's presidency. Personally, I admired this woman so much. She truly made a difference during her time as a leader, and she's just so real and sincere about her purpose in life and about helping others. She's a truly great example. This was a really educational and fun read for me. It took me about 10 days to read it, and most of the times I really didn't want to put it down. Also, if you want me to review a specific book, just put it in the comments and I'll go buy it.